Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation. My name is Rachel Wayne and I'm currently a master's degree student at the University of Winchester. Today we'll look at animals in film and how their portrayals affect their welfare. Throughout the presentation, you can scan the various QR codes with your phone camera to take to the articles mentioned if you wish to read them in your spare time. The standard links and references will also be provided at the end of the presentation. This presentation will cover why animals are often represented through film, while recognising different portrayals by exploring positive and negative effects and acknowledging if animal welfare is affected. A look at the reality of the vilinisation of certain species and conclude whether the film influences human habits and beliefs. Finally, identifying potential recommendations for the future to protect animals and their welfare. Please keep in mind when referring to animals that this is concerning non-human animals. So, why are animals portrayed in film? They help the narrative when writers approach sensitive topics. This narrative support maintains emotional distance and a lighter approach to potentially triggering subjects, including death, violence, fear, and pain. The narration integrates underlying messages and offers emotional distance while focusing on relatable issues. These approaches also appear in television shows and video advertisements. A study by Keller and Girl in 2020 explored the effectiveness of using animals in advertisements. Using animals provides a loophole to escape the rigours imposed by the natural world. Animals in film are adapted and manipulated to fit the desired plot that using humans would not rationally work. Furthermore, illustrators utilise these animal characters to be able to focus on plot development by suspending disbelief in actions. Animals have been used and cherished throughout history and are seen as appealing and relatable, allowing us to identify with them. Neurologist Sigmund Freud hypothesised that children felt equal to animals and that behaviour was more relatable than adult human behaviour. Animals are instinctual with pure and simple emotions, similar to children. Therefore, this emotional connection is used to seek appeal when developing a film. Furthermore, animal characters transcend limiting markers such as race and gender to be universally relatable. Therefore, without labels, can offer a clean slate to roles. Delinking human identity from a character's personality allows identification and connections with characters. The symbolic nature of animal characters enables the work to speak to the audience as individual personalities. However, this is not to say that concepts such as race and gender do not persist among animal characters, as they do mirror human culture. Still, animalistic traits allow for a more straightforward interpretation. Animals can instead be used as symbols for comic relief by appealing to adults as images of satire, while being used as an image of silliness or cuteness to appeal to children. An insight into whether the portrayal of animals in films can have a positive effect on their welfare. Films involving animals can depict real-life issues. This can include struggles of endangered species and raising awareness for protecting and supporting these animals. For example, the Spix macaw, as shown in the hit movie Rio, is endangered due to the harm of the exotic wildlife trade. Audiences fell in love with these animals and now aware of the issue could do more to help. Since the film's release in 2011, the focus has been on saving the species from extinction through support such as raising funds for breeding programs. In July last year, a successful breeding program released 6 individuals into the wild. This comeback is hopeful for the future. This success story positively depicts how animal representation can be essential in films with important messages. Films can present realistic animal ownership, exposing a better view to people who believe owning pets is easy with no negatives. These representations rationalise how hard it is to own certain pets and breeds, and how costly the care can be. It can reduce unrealistic expectations effects on animals and their welfare. For example, films such as Marley and Me show how difficult it can be to train a dog and how destructive they can be. This representation may reduce the likelihood of people spontaneously getting a pet by giving the audience a reality check. Many films, such as Hotel for Dogs, promote that stray animals should not be treated as lost causes. This film focuses on dogs and how rescue dogs deserve a chance at life rather than being placed into a pound, potentially resulting in the animal being put to sleep due to capacity issues. It promotes adopting animals from shelters, as these usually need a little more love. 14 out of the rescue dogs used for the film were actually adopted by the film's cast members afterwards. This adoption promotion is a theme that hits even harder for an audience when based on true stories, such as Rescued by Ruby. Research has indicated that many children prefer animal characters to human characters. These characters encourage audiences to see through their eyes and in their shells. This view provides messages on concepts including respect, love, and pain. Writers specifically developed these characters to elicit empathy and compassion for the world around us, using relatable traits to reflect human vulnerabilities and emotions. Films can elicit these emotions by providing an insight into animal suffering and allow the audience to empathise with these animals and be inspired to help and make a difference in their lives. An example of an accurate portrayal of animal testing and abuse of captivity was in the 2011 film Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which resulted in PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, applauding the film for not only this accuracy, but doing it without using real apes for filming. This heartfelt representation is explored further in a book chapter by George et al. In 2016, emphasizing their intelligence and the emotional bond this creates with the audience. Other films, such as A Dog's Purpose and classics including Black Beauty, use a method with the animals as the film's narrator, voiced by humans. This method gives a deeper view of the animal's feelings, increasing relatability and empathy. A book newsletter by Norris in 2012 explored how much Black Beauty changed how we see horses. Representations in Black Beauty are thought to have significantly impacted horse welfare by helping abolish the bearing rein, while bringing other welfare issues into the light. This change implies that film representation can promote good welfare, while diminishing poor welfare in practice. Films can better understand how animals are exploited and treated in entertainment, such as circuses, as represented in films like Dumbo. Images of these animals being chained up and whipped to perform for human entertainment resulted in many people speaking out on the issue, including the cast of the March 2019 live-action remake. Coincidentally, in July 2019, the UK government passed a law banning the use of wild animals in travelling circuses in England. The ban came into full force on the 20th of January 2020. Films can do a great job of showing how animals may feel about specific environments and stimuli through the effects of anthropomorphism. For example, how unhappy they may appear within captive environments as depicted in films, and they seem more relatable through the anthropomorphic features of the character, which tends to increase empathy. These depictions can help support species that may not be commonly known or seen and appear in the wild as less relatable. In addition, this representation exposes these species to the public, increasing funding efforts for the concerned species and evoking apprehension about husbandry for animals in captivity. Animals being in a captive environment is controversial in many films, presenting the idea that animals are happier in the wild and should not be held captive for entertainment. In the movie Happy Feet, the penguin is briefly shown in captivity, where he becomes bored and even somewhat delusional. This insight drives the audience to internally evaluate the ethics of retaining wild animals in captivity. This depiction has helped raise concerns about abnormal behaviour caused by boredom within captivity, such as pacing, bar biting, and self-mutilation, which can cause stress and injury without intervention. Enlightenment on these concerns consequently can improve the level of welfare in industries due to the public pressure and petitions. Examples of cases include orcas in captivity, which is seen through the representations in films such as Free Willy. This film was followed by controversial documentaries such as Blackfish in 2013, which delved into SeaWorld's mistreatment of orcas in captivity. This film sparked public awareness, ultimately leading to SeaWorld announcing in 2016 that they would no longer be breeding orcas in captivity and that the current generation would be their last. An insight into whether the portrayal of animals in films can have a negative effect on their welfare. When films demonise animals, it can negatively affect their welfare. This can take form in different ways in film. One way this is done is through creating unrealistic motives, where animals act fictionally for the plot rather than natural behaviour being represented. These motives are a theme in movies such as Jaws and Deep Blue Sea, where the great white and mako sharks are shown to have one mission: to hunt down and consume humans. This portrayal is simply inaccurate in the real world and creates a negative perception of these animals, which can harm their welfare. A journal article by Obram and Parsons in 2015 found that accurate documentaries increased public support and efforts for conservation. This research could predict that inaccurate movie portrayal would have the opposite effect. Another concern from these negative portrayals is speciesism from social views within the animal kingdom from a human perspective. Social views tend to influence many thoughts and messages portrayed to others, which can be dangerous with inaccurate information. The decrease on the social ladder and increasing social intolerance often occur due to erroneous film portrayals, including famous examples being a fear of piranhas and sharks due to films promoting them as mindless human killing machines, when in reality is quite different. These animals suffer greatly at the hands of humans, and the fear surrounding them allows this suffering to continue without check. It is also common for creators to exaggerate the features of animals to create unrealistic representations in an attempt to make them appear cuter, more human, or scarier. The cuter animals tend to have bigger eyes, brighter colours, and a softer or fluffier appearance. The more human features are often being given eyebrows and human-like eyes. This interpretation can be positive because people want to help these cute animals, such as endangered species like pandas. However, it can be negatively affected due to the unrealistic views of these species, which can cause welfare problems. For example, species portrayed this way may be presumed to be approachable. Therefore, when humans become injured from these interactions, the animals tend to be the ones that suffer. When dogs are anthropomorphized in film, such as being presented as loving humans unconditionally, being low maintenance, and being obedient, this information can lead to disappointment once purchasing a dog. This expectation disappointment could lead to abuse from the owner from frustration, or giving up the dog to rescue shelters, causing unnecessary stress, as explored in a study by Galanda et al. In 2014. The risk of anthropomorphism is even more prevalent in films like Madagascar, as the risk of making the animals, such as lemurs, appeal more as pets, threatening their wild populations because of the exotic pet trade. This risk was explored further in an article by Lafleur et al. In 2019. The scary animals have the opposite features perceived as scary by humans and are often used in horror films and folk tales. Examples include changing eye colour, most commonly to red, having more prominent and sharper teeth, the colour overall being duller, and sizing up the individuals. This change creates a harmful image surrounding these animals, generating a negative perception. The negative perception can affect welfare due to people not feeling the need to protect these animals, leaving them vulnerable to becoming endangered and harmed due to social licenses and intolerance. Increased intentional cruelty can occur from social constructs, especially from species seen as pests or dangerous that encourage people to look the other way when cruelty occurs. Sharks are a common consequence of this ignorance because they are often caught and have their fins removed for shark fin soup. Fin removal is excruciating for sharks and leads to a slow, agonizing death. And due to the film industry demonizing them, there is not much effort from the public to prevent this cruelty. Since 1975, when Jaws was released, populations of sharks have dramatically decreased. Their population has reduced by 71% in the past decade. Over 100 million sharks are killed each year, leaving 30% of sharks to be threatened. A similar example, spider film portrayals, such as in Eight-Legged Freaks, instill fear in spiders and promotes their killing in unethical ways, such as squishing them. In contrast, animals portrayed as the hero or cute characters are often featured as needing support and are more commonly found on funding websites such as the WWF. It seems acceptable through social intolerance to injure and even kill these species because humans perceive them negatively in social constructs, when many species are endangered, essential to their ecosystem, and even benefit humans, such as for agriculture and horticulture. Wolf spiders, for example, are used when farming cranberries due to consuming the bugs that may overrun the box, destroying the crops. Increased unintentional cruelty has been observed due to the inaccurate information in films portraying animals. An example of this was after the release of Finding Nemo, where one of its repeated messages being all drains lead to the ocean. This line led to an extensive array of pet fish, largely cold water and tropical, being flushed down toilets, ultimately causing stress and eventual death due to the temperature shock and chemicals in the waterway. Comparably, the film Free Willy, the tale of an orca suffering in captivity and then finding freedom, is an uplifting and positive story promoting how harmful keeping these animals in captivity can be. However, the unfortunate effect of this film resulted in the orca used for filming being released into the wild, where he struggled to socialise with wild orcas and hunt by himself. Unfortunately, he died months later from pneumonia. Now, a journal by Marino et al. In 2020 explores the harmful effects of keeping orcas in captivity, including the unnecessary stress and suffering these animals have experienced. Unrealistic expectations can cause emotional stress for animals, especially domesticated animals. Unfortunately, these expectations have been found in many cases with people purchasing dogs due to the uplifting and promiscuous idea of owning a dog. Unfortunately, this often leads to many dogs ending up in shelters because the owners cannot cope when expectations are not lived up to, generally when these dogs begin to show behaviour problems, such as reactivity. As explored in a journal by Henderson and Anderson in 2005, abandonment occurs when films only show preferred behaviours in films from certain breeds, such as Dalmatians and Huskies, which are not recommended for first-time owners. What is the reality of this villainisation? The statistics represented through the displayed graph signify the annual human deaths caused by animals in 2022. As shown, death is more often caused by dogs than sharks. Dogs are responsible for 30,000 human deaths annually, whereas sharks do not even make it onto this graph due to only being responsible for 5 deaths in 2022. Dogs are high on this list due to usually strays carrying disease and giving this to humans once bitten on approach, potentially due to how dogs are commonly portrayed as harmless in film. These statistics provide a greater insight into how inaccurate film portrayal can be. Unfortunately, this perspective is rarely shown. From the examples shown throughout the presentation, we can infer that films influence how animals are seen and treated. This can also be supported by this influence on other habits in human culture. For example, a study by Heatherton and Sargent in 2009 showed that adolescents with high exposure to smoking in movies were 3 times more likely to become smokers than those with low exposure. This research further supports the indication that movies can influence how we act. This evidence raises concerns about how harmful an effect inaccurate and negative portrayals of animals in films can encompass when humans can be easily influenced through social constructs. A few provisions could be implemented to reduce the adverse effects of film portrayal on welfare. For example, films could include warning messages at the beginning or end of films stating that representations may not be accurate or having positive messages about the animals involved, such as conservation support information or advice links. To decrease inaccuracies, films should involve animal professionals to ensure essential and extensive views and research is considered. It is clear that when animal portrayal is done with good intentions and educated approaches, this can have a positive outcome for species. However, if done with ill intent or uneducated processes, this can harm the welfare of portrayed species, leading to unnecessary suffering and decreasing the overall quality of life of many non-human animals. This effect occurs when films influence specific approaches or habits that can cause social intolerance or tolerance in particular species or breeds of animals. There needs to be more research conducted into how animal portrayal in films can influence how we see and treat animals in the future. Thank you for listening. Feel free to leave any discussion points or questions in the comments.